Welcome back to the 4AG warehouse, and welcome back to this installment of the Starlet series. So if you've been following the series, you would have seen last time basically I ran a 12.0 and my flywheel came loose. That wasn't the end of it. What actually happened after that was my alternator also exploded. So times have been interesting around here. I decided to on the hip of that, do a full refresh of the entire drivetrain, and we're here now about, well, 14 months later. So this new drivetrain is almost ready to go in, but what I'm going to do is not show you a 25-minute video of me assembling a motor, because I have a few motor assembly videos on my channel, and honestly, it's a 4AG. You can look up the Toyota manual if you want to know how to assemble it to Toyota standards. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to run through the mod list on this engine so you can know exactly what I'm running, and then you can put yours together any way you like. So starting at the bottom, I have made my own sump this time. I have had some experience making sumps, mainly for my race car, my tuber it's called. But so this one, I wanted to sort of integrate a few designs. So the sump is baffled, and it has sort of directional fins, and there's a bit of technology going on inside it. I anticipate I've added about 1.8 litres to the sump. I've made it a little bit more shallow, but I've made the sump in a way that it's not flat and the oil will always flow to the center. So as far as harmonic balances go, because I'm sick of cracking harmonic balances, the standard Toyota ones, I've got a Ross Performance harmonic balancer. I've gone this time for a silver top 20 valve oil pump, because it has the biggest gears and the best designed gears. It's the last revision of this type of pump. So it's the same pump as the black top 20 valve, but the silver top one will bolt straight onto a 16 valve with no mods and keep the same tensioner. So I've also gone and got an Mrp Belt Idler. When we've run this on the dyno, we've always heard a sort of slapping sound, and it turns out that it's the timing belt on the return side from the exhaust cam down to the pulley on the crank. It slaps probably about, I don't know, 2 inches at least, and yeah, that's not cool. As far as next up, I'm running HKS cam gears, and they are the old school gears. They were new when I bought them probably 12-13 years ago. I'm running HKS cams. They are 264 by 8.35. Now these are the old grind. These are 1980s cams, and I was lucky enough to get a set on Yahoo auctions, and they are the business. These are non-emissions friendly cams, and they are very lumpy and very aggressive. I'm running valve springs from Performance Springs here in Australia. It's a local company. I try and support local companies where I can. These springs have been good beyond 10,000. The highest we've revved this previous engine before was 10,400, and no valve flow at all, even running shim over bucket. I've converted now to a rear-wheel drive water pump, using the front-wheel drive back housing to use my current water system, and using a rear-wheel drive pump, I can very easily get an underdrive water pump, because the one I was running before happened to be bent, and I just kept running it. That was a front-wheel drive one. I just couldn't get another one, so I've had to do that conversion. But the rear-wheel drive water pump is actually really good because it has larger bearings and a larger shaft, so it's quite a bit stronger. So I've also now done a conversion on the 16 valve to a 20 valve alternator. It didn't really require much issues to overcome. All I had to do was elongate one of the holes in the tensioner bracket, and the 20 valve alternator bolted straight on and lines up perfectly. Now you'll see this pulley is larger than normal, That's because the pulley is actually off a 1MZ. Now, the standard pulley at the inside of the groove, so these are my measurements, and I use these for the underdrive purpose only. So I measured the standard 4AG one at 57 millimeters, and the 1MZ is a 62 millimeters, and that equals 9.1 or 9.2% underdrive. So that means I probably won't explode any alternators anytime soon. As far as my intake goes, I have a custom-made intake that I've been using for a very long time, with a 3SGE throttle body from a SW20 MR2. I have a Kelway exhaust manifold, which I've also had for a very, very long time. It's just a very basic steam pipe manifold, and I really like it because the runners are short and it is not completely equal length, so it's very close to the head, and I like it. It makes the sound a bit lumpy. The turbo now, as it was before, is a GTX2 2867R, and the max I'm pumping out of this is about 24 to 26 pound to get the power that I was using before. Inside the motor, I'm using Ross pistons, which are 8.5 to 1 compression ratio, and spool conrods. These have very, very, very big ends on the rods, and I had to actually hand machine out the engine block to clear the big ends of the rods. So yeah, they're pretty beefy. I'm using Mrp 2000 head studs, Mrp 2000 main bolts, no girdle on the crankshaft, and I'm using the Mrp 2000 big end bolts. I'm also using Mrp fasteners on the flywheel. So this was a bit weird because using the Mrp fasteners on the flywheel, on the standard flywheel I should say, I thought I was doing myself a favor, and that's actually what caused my flywheel to come off. So there's a little bit of information there that they don't advertise, because you shouldn't really run them on the standard flywheel because it's actually too soft. So if you torque the flywheel up, it will actually compress the flywheel, and if you get any NVH, which is a harmonic vibration, will actually cause the flywheel to start coming off and start micro welding to the crank, which is the exact problem that I had before. Trying to do better, I was actually doing worse. So I'm now going to use an Mrp Flywheel, which is a very, very nice bit of kit. This flywheel is about 200 grams lighter than the blacktop 20 valve flywheel. Previously, I was running a 4AG ZE flywheel, so I could get the big 225mm clutch. Now technology's come a long way, and I'm running the Mrp, the larger NA flywheel. So it's the 212 or 215, whatever people want to say, diameter flywheel, which is the same size as the standard small port stuff, with the Mrp Kevlar clutch and their matching pressure plate. I'm still using the W58. So my W58 was originally JZA80 with a remote shifter. I converted that using RA60 rear end and MA61 top loader and a night parts bell housing. I've dealt with other bell housings before, and I'm not going to name any names here, but the night parts one, as hard as they are to get, are very, very much the best bell housing you can use for a Turbo 4A. There is a lot of room in the bell housing for machining it out to fit a ZE light flywheel, and there's a lot of room in there for drilling it, machining it, taking it out, making it bigger, and they're sort of expensive in Australia. So I'm in Western Australia. To get one here costs between $700 to $800, and you may be sort of scoffing at that amount, but you only really need to buy a bell housing once, and once you've got it, don't need to do any more with that. I've had this particular bell housing for probably close to 15 years, and it's taken an absolute beating. and I'm never gonna really need to buy another bell housing. Okay, so up till now, I've been using a standard small port cylinder head. This is not the head that I'm using. This is an example of a head. As you can see, it's pretty scungy. This has been in storage for a while. But if you look at the standard ports, see how there's big edges on, there's ribs in there, there's all sorts of stuff. So what I wanted to do, because I've been running a standard head for so long, I've done a lot of dyno sessions and I should have a good idea of a back-to-back comparison for improvement on the cylinder head. So I went ahead and bought myself a die grinder and practiced how to port a cylinder head on a dirt bike engine, and then hacked into my pretty much rare now small port cylinder head. Here's pretty much what I did. So I just wanted to improve the port design and get rid of any sort of, not so much choking or restriction, but just make the port flow a bit nicer. And I think I've achieved it. Some of the ports had a big hump as the port went straight, and into the valve recess there was a big hump, so the air had to go sort of over the top, and it sort of, in my mind, would create a lot of turbulence. I did a few tests with water, running water through there, because the air we breathe is a liquid basically. So I just wanted to improve the flow of the ports. I didn't really want to change them so much. I did a bit of work in the combustion chamber, just to remove the sharp edges, to remove any points of sort of heat soak or contact or anything like that. I didn't do any sort of deburring inside here or anything. I sort of, there were a couple of dags, so I sort of chipped them off and made sure everything was not going to sort of come off. It wasn't too important to me because I haven't had any of those pieces come loose before, even though I have read about it. But for myself, it's really have not been a concern, so I'm not too worried about it. Yeah, so back to the porting. So I pretty much got rid of this lip here and blended this little piece here into the port size. So now my ports are significantly larger, and I managed to, well, when I removed the valves, I managed to get the die grinder up inside there and sort of relieved a lot of the area on the entry to the cylinder. And yeah, I don't know. I think it's going to work pretty decent. I don't really know. I'm not a cylinder head porting guy. I'm just having a go, really. So we'll see the results when it goes on the dyno, because my last run at WTF Auto was basically the combination that I'm running now, but with a standard head. This is pretty good for science purposes, that I'm just doing it this way. But to be honest with you, the combination of stuff really worked really well. So I was just keen to keep it, and just to keep things rolling, and just to see how much I could just improve it slightly and make it work a bit better. Anyway, enough with the jibber jabber. So enough of that. Here it is. I guess now we throw the log on and light the fire. Well, okie dokie, we've got it all back together now. Oil system is all plumbed up, I have a big remote filter. I use a Z418 because it's huge, and I've got a cooler behind the grill there. Got my breather tank back on, and even got a filter back on, radiators in, all that kind of jazz. I'm just gonna throw some oil in it now. I'm gone with this stuff, Penrite running in oil. I was going to use the Valvoline sort of stuff, but the Penrite stuff is still pretty good. So I'm going to end up running the Penrite 10/10ths racing oil, which is a 1040. It's a semi-synthetic oil, but it is very, very good oil. I've used it before on other motors and had good success. I was going to run the Penrite VR1. I wanted to run that because, I've seen the success Rob Dahm has had with it in the past. He pretty much ran his 4-rotor with no oil pressure, just on the oil vapor that was in the engine, and it survived and there was no damage, and I was like very, very impressed. But I can't get that easily here. I can get this Penrite stuff very, very easily. So so I'm just going to throw some oil in it, and in the engine, and in the box, and in the diff as well, and then I'm just going to fire it up. It is not the first startup, I will admit, because you never ever record your first startup because it doesn't go very well, and to be honest, it didn't. I had a few issues getting it running, but they were my own fault. I had my fuel pressure regulator, which is now here instead of where it was over here, was jammed shut just from sitting so long. This whole thing sat for 14 or 15 months before I started putting it back together. So let's get busy and fire it up.